What's up, guys? Astromagic Goddess here. So I'm back today with another one of my deck profile. Actually, after a long while, haven't done one of these in a while, I think. So I've been playtesting this build for a while now, and I think it's at a point where I can profile it. It's doing pretty well, and I like kind of what the changes and things I've done so far to it. So we are running it's a Prism Vert deck, as you can see by the deck box and whatnot, and sleeves. And it does run Garnets and whatnot. So we're going to try to do this in a way here. So I'll start off with my starter. I run Sapphire. She's a when you're grade 3 or greater with Prism in its card name, original card name. I guess that means something. Is placed on Vanguard. Choose one of your other rear guards with Prism in its name and return it to hand. Or you may return it to hand. So, one of the good things about Prism is that, as a whole, I think it works the same as Duo too. Prism and Duo are limit break decks, so you don't really need to they're not G decks in a sense that if someone tries to not ride or something, that's not really a problem anymore. Or some things like that, it doesn't matter. So it's nice that you can use it on the ride, and you can set up for a few nice combos and whatnot. So that's my starter. Moving on to the triggers, of course, 4 Prism heals. So put these there as I go. 4 Prism draws. So it's important that you use Prisms, because there are enough counterblasts in this deck that are Prism only. That you'd want to have as much Prism as possible. Then of course there's 8 crits, but here's the other. This is the new crit, Sunshine Clear. She's a counterblast 1. Yeah, you can choose a card named herself essentially from hand, reveal it, and return it to your deck. So when this card itself is returned to hand from rearguard, you can reveal itself with a counterblast. And then if you have a Prism Vanguard, you can pay the cost. If you do, search your deck for a grade 1 or greater card with Vert, Rosa, or Clear in its card name. Call it to rear. Shuffle your deck. You may return this card to your hand. So you call it, and then you can return it to hand. So it's a pretty nice card for searching out. You would use it to search out Verts, Rosas if you need a grade 2 for whatever reason. And you probably wouldn't search out itself. Or at least I wouldn't. I'm sure if you really wanted to do that, you could, I suppose, just to shuffle your deck or whatever. Grade 1s, we run 3 of the Stride enablers. This is essentially a vanilla when you're not using it to stride with, just because it's a card that you use mainly with Loris. But because the deck does want to stride, it does want to run a few of those. I don't run 4 though, because I think that kind of clunks it, makes it a bit too clunky, and I want more Prisms in the build, honestly. Then I run 4 areas. This can be really anything. I use this because it's Prism, but the deck itself does use Counterblast, but it doesn't use as much. Like, I find that the games usually end by the time I would have needed to unflip anyway, and there are cards that do help you unflip, but you're generally going to guard the Vanguard with it. Most of the time you won't even have a rear guard on field for them to attack, or that you'll really care about. So you're generally going to guard the Vanguard. So you can use Perfect Guard Gs or whatever if you want. But I use it for the Prism name. Then I use 3 of the Lates, and she's a she's returned from rear to hand. If you have a Prism Vanguard, you can Soul Charge 1 and counter flip one of your damage. So again, this is one of those cards that lets you flip back your damage. And then you can choose one of your other units and give it +4, but you can't normal call her again, which isn't too much a problem, because you do have cards that will call her back out for you if you need to. Then I run 2 of the Emeralds. This is one of the new ones. She's a when you return from hand from rear, return to hand from rear during a battle phase. If you have a Vanguard with Prism, choose 2 rear guards with Prism and return them to your hand. And then if you return 2, choose a unit, and it gets +5. She's pretty good in that she can return a lot of stuff for you. The problem is it's during battle phase, so it kind of limits her usability a bit. I guess it makes it balanced, and because of that, I only run 2 because I feel that she's kind of a bit clunkier, more than 2 after a lot of playtesting. And then I run 2 Mercurs. This is the 10k attacker for Prism. She's just nice for extra attack if you don't have boosters or whatnot. And she just kind of fills a lot of roles here. She can be anything though. It's like this is the 2 spots that you can switch out for anything you want. I've tested a lot of different things, from the Shizuku to the Soul Blast 2 draw a card, and I think this one has worked the best for me. Moving on to the grade 2s, I run 4 Celtics. So she's a Counterblast Prism, again, Prism Counterblast. On Vanguard or Rear, when she hits a Vanguard, you can pay the cost. If you do, choose one of your other rear guards, return it, and then draw a card. So she can net you some advantage. And since a lot of your units have stuff for being returned to hand, because it's Bermuda, it helps out in setting up things like that as well. Then I go with 3 Rosas. This is the new Rosa. You can search for it with a crit triggered over there. And she is a Soul Blast 1 when your other unit is returned to your hand from rear. If you have a Vanguard with Limit Break 4, you can pay the cost. If you do, choose one of your other units, and that unit and this unit get +3. So she's kind of like Nurse of Broken Heart. So I only run her at 3 though. She can be run at 4, and 4 is pretty okay as well. And there's a card in here that you can switch out for a 4th one if you like. She's nice in that she's searchable, and she does use your Soul Blast, but she lets you make columns, which is nice. So run 3 of her. And then for my last grade 2s, well, actually I have a few. So I run 1 of her. She's just a straight up 12k attacker. I just kind of like 1 of her in here. It's just, she's shown up at pretty good opportune moments for me, and where I haven't been able to get like Rosa off or whatever, and just being a 12k attacker has really helped out. So that's why I run her. She's worked out for me, but this can be switched out for another Rosa if you'd want, or switch out a Rosa for another one of her if you want. But I do recommend at least 2 Rosas in the build. Then I run 1 Filet. She's an 8k Harmony. Once per turn, when this unit becomes Harmony, you can pay the cost, draw a card. So she's really nice in that you don't need other Harmony cards, because Harmony works by if something goes behind her. So you can just call stuff behind her and it'll Harmony and get you a free draw. Essentially, she almost always will give you a free draw. Like there's rare cases where you play her in the turn and she won't give you a draw. And she also helps with the counter. She uses the counterblast, I should say. But I've found that she nets me a good amount of advantage, even if she is just an 8k. So that's what's bad about her. You can switch her out as well if you want, but I find that she's a pretty nice tech-in that I've had. If you're having trouble with Link Joker for whatever reason, that's she or the 12k is probably what I would switch out for a Poker, the Earth Elemental. Then I run 2 Amelias. She's a when this unit is returned to hand, Counterblast 1, draw a card. She has Resist. So the Resist, I find that she's pretty nice against Dragon decks and Link Joker and whatnot, Mega Colony sometimes. So she's pretty decent, and the draw is nice. So again, another one of your little Counterblast users that you do. I do like running her at 2 though, so she's worked out for me. Grade 3s, of course, run 4 Verts. She's pretty much one of the stars of the deck. She's the Break Ride, which what I didn't remember in a lot of the games I played, which probably would have put more advantage to me, is that when rides over her, you get to draw a card, and you get return 2 Bermuda Triangle units, and she gets the 10k, of course, or whoever rides her gets the 10k, of course. But I kept forgetting the draw a card thing, so she does net you that card, which is nice. So I run her at 4. I run 1 Labrador. She has a pretty nice limit break effect. Lets you call 3 prisms, and if you call 3, they have to be separate rearguard circles, of course. So she gets plus 10, plus 1 crit. Pretty nice, because if for whatever reason you have to attack with her, it's going to be at least 21, even without anything else. So 21 and a crit, and she has her own ability to return prisms to hand. So this is like one of those moments where if you return the emerald, you can counterblast 1, return the emerald, and the emerald will return 2 others. So clearing up your field. So because you already don't run that many non-prisms, it works out most of the time for you. Then I run 3 Garnets. This is the... Gosh, wedding has to be hard to read. So she does the same thing essentially as Labrador, in that she can call 3 prisms from hand, but she also gains an additional limit break 5 ability to get an extra drive check. So she essentially is kind of like a stride, and then she gets a counterblast 1 prism. If a unit, when the units return, you can pay that and give something 5k. So which is also another way to use your counterblast. Which I don't find myself doing that though that much, to use her counterblast that way, because generally she will ride over a break ride and hit for pretty high anyway. So that's Garnet. She's very defensive too, because if you can use cards to bounce on the enemy's turn and then counterblast 1, and she's a 16k. So that's why I run more of her than Labrador. Labrador is just kind of like an aggressive option for when I don't have limit break 5. And I have a choice. And generally, if you don't have limit break 5, Labrador most of the time will be the better option to try to finish the game anyway if you're not on stride. So 3 of those. Moving on to my stride deck, I run... Gosh, we're running out of space here. Let's see if I can move this mat. So the Bushy-Road mat's pretty small. So I run 4 Verts. So this is the new Vert. Again, wedding is really hard to read. She's a limit break 4, so she helps with the Rosa. She counts still. And you can flip a copy of herself, and then choose 3 cards from hand and discard them. At the end of the battle, this unit attacks a Vanguard. If you have a Prism Heart, you can pay the cost. If you do, choose up to 2 rear guards with Prism, return them to your hand, and put this in your G zone face up, and then you can ride a grade 3 from Prism. So it lets you play your grade 3, like if you need to go out all out and attack, it lets you play the grade 3 to attack, and then you can return it back to your hand and then ride it. So she's essentially next stage for Bermuda. So she's pretty decent there. She's one of the stars. Then I run 4 of the Labrador. So this is kind of an older card, but it's a once per turn. You can flip a copy of herself. And then if you have a heart with Prism, of course, choose 2 rear guards, they get plus 5, and then after they attack or boost, return them to your hand. So a nice way to return, 1 to get GB2 if you need it, or if you want it, and then just to return stuff to your hand. Activating stuff like this crit trigger, or if you want to save a grade 3 again. So it's pretty nice with that. So it's after that unit attacks, so you should attack with this first. You don't run stand triggers anyway, so it's fine. And then put triggers on and then attack and bounce it back up. Then I run 2 Olivias. So she's the counterblast 1, and choose flip a copy of herself. And then when it attacks a Vanguard, if you have 1 or more face-up cards in G zone, pay the cost, choose up to 5 rear guards, and return them to your hand. And if 3 of them, or if all the ones you return are different names, then you get to call 2 units to, essentially you make another column, so you get another attack. You don't use her a lot, so if you were going to switch a stride out, these would be the ones you'd want to switch out. But I like to have her because she's kind of like a nice option to have, so where I just need to break down the guard in my opponent's hand, and I can't do my big vert combo for whatever reason, so she's pretty nifty there. I think the crit also is somewhat scary. Then I run 1 Nectaria. She's essentially an on-hit Prism Heart. Put something back in the hand, put something right back down, and give it plus 5. So she's kind of a better gosh, that common one, the generic one, but for Prism. Run one Amorous. See, when you place her in Van, she's up to 2 of your rear guards, and then return them to your hand. You can run her or the Act one. It doesn't really matter. This is an open spot, but sometimes it's been nice to return some stuff. Most of the time, though, you'll end the turn with stuff already in your hand, so the other one might be a bit better. But again, that's an open spot, and I've just found that I'm just going to use her. This can literally be anything, though. So this and the Olivias are pretty much open. I find the Nectaria is nice to have, though, and the other ones are definitely must-haves in this build. For my G-Guards, I do run 3 Leonas, and she has a pretty nice combo in this build in that you can use her with Garnet to... so when you place her in G-Guard, you can choose a card from hand and call it to Guard Circle. Well, after you choose a rear guard and return it to hand. So you don't have to call it the Guard Circle, but if you do and it's the same card that you return to hand, then she gets +5 guard. Most of the time you won't use it for that, though, so she'll just be 15. You'll use it to return whatever, because you want to save it, or for whatever reason you can return it last turn. So she's pretty nice in that she gives you options. But she does activate Garnet, though, so even if you can't do this, you can essentially give yourself a 20k shield, or 25 if you want to do more. And then that's not counting whatever the guard is. So if you actually want to guard with whatever it is you're guarding with, then that's fine too. Then one Narsha, or Nasha, and she is choose one card from hand, reveal it, and if you have the same unit with the same grade, it goes +5. It's very easy to accomplish. If you want another copy of her, you could probably switch to Amorous, if you're planning to keep the Olivias, or if you're getting rid of the Olivias, one of them as well. So she's pretty easy 20k, like almost guaranteed. So if you need guard power, or you feel that your meta you need the guard power in your meta, this is definitely a good option. But I find Leona is fine in my meta. So this is the build. Let me see. So when playing this build, one of the things that you want to keep in mind is that this is not GB and this isn't GB, so you can play this on like grade 2 turn and on your grade 3 ride, or on your grade 3 ride you can put this back a search. Ideally, though, you can use this to search I think of it kind of like Shandi, but kind of harder to pull off in a sense. You want to use her to find your verts. Most of the time you're always going to search for verts with her, because most of the turns you're doing where you summon things, you can return them to hand anyway. So the 11k attacker and her being 12k is essentially the same, and she uses your Soul Blast, whereas this has it can't get as high as she may be able to, but it has the ability to be your stride fodder, or if you need to ride it with this vert. So when using this vert, don't use it unless you can ride with this or this. Generally, if you can ride a vert with it, you probably don't want to do it because you probably don't have the field for it, because this build is very defensive thanks to Garnet. So if you're forced to be on Garnet, whether after one of these turns and you don't kill them, or you just have to ride Garnet, that's not too bad either, because you can kind of just wait it out in a bit. This build can tank pretty well. But I think this is probably the most competitive Bermuda build right now. It's certainly one of my favorites to play, in that I just like restanding decks. I think most people do. But it has a lot of options to do things, and that's why I do a lot of these little texts and whatnot, because I like to be able to deal with a lot of situations. And really, these 4 slots here can be anything, because I think you only need 3 roses, honestly. But and I typically run 11 grade 2s, so these 4 can be anything, and then like I said, these 2 can be anything. So you do have some freedom, but I think a lot of the other slots are pretty much, you need to have them. The draws definitely need to be there, because again, it's a kind of a tankier build, so you need the draws. I would say even if you wanted to, you could probably go 6 draws and 6 crits, but I'm not sure there's another prism draw, so you probably want to stick with the prisms, because the prisms do let you do neat stuff with the Labradors and whatnot. And I don't recommend running 4 Garnet, because even though Garnet is nice to stay on, a lot of the times I found it to be very clunky. Like I'd wish sometimes I would pull, I wish it was a Labrador, and I don't want to have, like, probably you can do 2 and 2, but you want to ride Garnet more than you want to ride Labrador, but you want the option to be there sometimes for the Labrador. And I know it's a one-of, but it does kind of appear whenever you least expect it. Then Amorous, she's pretty nice in that, like, if you had to rush out your turn for whatever reason, like you went grade 3 first, you can't stride first, then your grade 3 turn you rush them and they're not killing your rear guards for whatever reason. She's pretty nice. She combos very well with the Amelias and a lot of this, and even this, she activates these abilities or the other grade ones. So there's that. Perfect guards might be hard for some people because I know these are pretty expensive. The black one's more expensive than the white for whatever reasons, and you can run perfect guard G's, but like we've seen through the deck here, the deck looks like it uses a lot of counterblast, but realistically in the game it's not going to use a lot of counterblast, and generally you're going to win or lose the game by 2nd or 3rd stride, and I think that's true for most decks. So that you can hold out, but if you're trying to be aggressive for the win, then you can keep verting it out. One of the things I really love about the new Vert, though, is that she can be first stride. So if you're pushed to the point where she needs to be your first stride, then go ahead and do it. If you have the cards. Generally, most of the time you won't have the cards to really make full use of it, because you want to be able to have a lot of attackers out, and you can play the grade 3 that you run on her, but you want to make sure that when the second ride comes, that you're break riding, and that you're able to call after the break ride. So keep those things in mind. But most of the time your first stride is going to be Labrador here, or Nectaria. Or Nectaria is an on hit, and I find that just Labrador is probably better for the pressure anyway, because plus 5k twice is nice, and you can return those to your hand, so you can just you can overextend yourself in this build, which I really like. Anyway, so hopefully that gives you guys at least enough an idea to either test out your own builds or know a bit more about the deck. But it's been Ash from Magic Goddess. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you all next time.